Hope you enjoyed your break. My name is Meryl Ainsman, and I'm a leader here in Pittsburgh in the Jewish community, and have really been involved in this area since pretty much October 28th, 2018, excuse me, October 27th, 2018, and in the hours and days and weeks and years since. Our community suffered a terrible tragedy on that day, but there have been some wonderful things that have come out of that, including this conference, and the people on this stage represent a lot of positive things that have come out after that day. Renisa Davidson, who is right there at the end, is a program manager in the 1027 Healing Partnership, which I'll talk about a little bit in a second. And Maggie Feinstein is the executive director, and she will be moderating the panel. Amy Mallinger is a co-founder of REACH, Remember, Educate, and Combat Hate. She is also the granddaughter of Rose Mallinger, who tragically was killed on October 27th, and the niece of Andrea Mallinger, who I think you'll be hearing from in a second, who was injured on that day. And then Nick Haberman, the only man on the stage, who is the founder of Light Education Initiative. You heard from Nick a little bit earlier, but what he has accomplished and continues to accomplish is extraordinary, and reaching into areas of young people and their teachers, and hopefully creating a network of people who really understand the value of anti-hate education and the detriment of hateful acts. So I turn it over to this wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Meryl. And thank you all for being here and for the panelists who are here with me. So my name's Maggie, like Meryl had mentioned. I'm the director of the 1027 Healing Partnership, and we provide support and resources to promote healing and resiliency to all members of Greater Pittsburgh community who were impacted directly and indirectly by the October 27th, 2018 synagogue shooting. So as such, in this way, the community impacted carries a really big weight of telling a story of what happened and who was impacted. And I think that there's a lot of people in this room who understand that from their own communities. There are two primary factors that have led to the creation of a speakers bureau for the families and survivors, and that's comprised of individuals who had direct impact, and they wanted to be able to tell their stories. And this was a natural bridge from decades of brave and impactful Holocaust survivors who have also been going into the schools and telling their stories. The other reason that this Speakers Bureau was created was that incidents of anti-Semitism are on the rise, unfortunately. And so you all heard a little bit more about that earlier. Since 2018, our community has consistently asked themselves how to turn overwhelming feelings of never again into action. All the people in this room who have experienced acts of targeted violence share in common that the experience brings a strong urge to prevent any similar acts from ever happening again. There's so many ways that we see people doing that, right? Trying to change policy, doing research, highlighting stories of success, building programs for prevention, and providing support to other survivors. Those are very common. Ultimately, unfortunately, as it comes to anti-Semitism, this year brought the largest number of incidents on record in the US, as we heard earlier. But that 200% increase in this past year has brought a real sense of urgency to that never again feeling. And it also has brought an increased sense of vulnerability to our American Jewish communities. Second, over the last 30 years, we've learned the incredible value of bringing Holocaust survivors into the classroom. A report, The Echoes and Reflections, done in partnership with the USC Shoah Foundation as well as the ADL, showed that students who have engaged in Holocaust education show higher critical thinking skills and notably a greater sense of social responsibility and civic efficacy if they watched survivor testimony as part of their experience. Further, on almost every single validated scale in that survey measuring respondents' critical thinking, tolerance, social responsibility, social agency, and civic efficacy, students who heard that testimony were going to score very differently, statistically significantly differently than students who did not hear direct survivor testimony. I do this work because I've learned from survivors over and over again about the power of healing, the power of perspective taking, And really, for me, it's about this question of vicarious resilience. How do we all learn something about resilience by hearing stories from other people? And that's what the Speakers Bureau does. We believe that that impact of testimony has been very well documented, and now it's about taking action to create something that can be meaningful. Our incredible panelists were already introduced, so I won't do that again. So Amy, do you mind going first? And can you talk a little bit about how you've gone from someone who experienced such traumatic loss in your family to sort of becoming a public speaker and speaking out against anti-Semitism?
Sure, thanks Maggie. So I think from very early on, my family always loved to tell stories, and we loved to sit around the table and laugh with each other. So when my grandmother, who I refer to as Bubby, which is the Yiddish term for grandma, when she was killed, we kind of continued that. That's how we share her legacy within our family, and that's how we keep her stories alive. So I think it all started when we first met with the families who came up and visited us from Parkland. And they were all doing things that were very involved and getting together and forming groups, and politically they were getting very involved. And I was kind of thinking, what can we do? You kind of feel a little lost in the shuffle a little of how you can be a change, how can you affect things, how can you turn such a negative thing into a positive. And so my family and I started speaking at different events following the film, Patrice O'Neill's film, Stories of the Tree of Life, Repairing the World. And we really enjoyed speaking to people. And so actually at the first Eradicate Hate Summit, we met a teacher named Catlin, who was from Shaler, where Nick was from. And we just were speaking to her, and she had mentioned, it'd be really great to have a speaker there and to have somebody to share this story with her students. And that kind of got us thinking, this might really be effective. This might be really powerful. So that was the first school we went to, and we kind of went to a few schools from there, and it caught on through some of the family groups. And from there, at the second year, last year at the Eradicate Hate Summit, we were like, okay, there's a need for this. We see that this is something that we need to do. And so other families wanted to get involved, and so that's when I came to Renisa and I said, I think we need to start something. I think we need to have something formal, and that's when REACH was born. So REACH stands for Remember, Educate, and Combat Hate, and we all tell our stories about our loved ones and about our experiences with students. We do high school and middle school students, and we really share our stories with them. So we are healing, and we are also helping them heal, and we're also on the way teaching them about anti-Semitism, about Judaism, about how Jewish people are just like the rest of us. So in a way, we're doing things we love by also helping.
Great, thank you so much, Amy. So Nick, you were a classroom teacher for 18 years before you started the Light Initiative, or before you did that more full time. Can you tell us about how you learned about the Bringing the Voices of Survivors? You've done a lot to help REACH learn how to kind of enter the classroom and work with classroom teachers. How did you learn about the value of that in working with survivors as bringing them into your classroom?
I first learned about it in my first year of teaching. I was an American history teacher in a public school just north of here. And like many American history teachers, I was supposed to teach the entire history of the Holocaust in 40 to 80 minutes. Depending on time, and immediately I realized there's no way I was going to be able to do that justice. So my first go-to was a recommendation from my aunt. She said, go to the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, call them up, see if they can help you out. They can probably get you a survivor. And so I called up the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, and they gave me a phone number. They said, call this survivor. His name's Jack Sitzsummer, and they said, ask him to come into your school. So I called him, and I said, will you come into my class? And he said, I don't want to come into your class. I want to speak to the whole grade. Not 30 kids, but 300 kids. And I said, oh, okay, as a first-year teacher. I said, I'll make that happen, not knowing what I was agreeing to. For any teachers out there, I was committing my school to a full grade-level assembly that was longer than a class period, and you can see where this is going. I wasn't making friends my first year with my administrators, but luckily my administrators recognized the value in this too. So Jack came to my school, and in about an hour, he shared his family's story of loss from the Holocaust. He lost all 6 members of his family, both of his parents, both of his sisters, both of his brothers. And in sharing this story, the students didn't find it to be depressing, the way that he told the story was incredibly inspiring and transformative. And it took me a decade to identify this, but what he did and what many Holocaust survivors so effectively learned how to do was that in a very short period of time, he inspired the students with his family story. He prepared them to talk about it by giving them talking points they could take home with them, and he empowered them to inherit his story as their own story. So even though they had never experienced anything like this, they left the auditorium changed, and they were committed to changing the environment of their school. So how this program worked is I picked up Jack logistically, like drove to his house, drove him to the school, he did the assembly, and I was driving him home, and I said, you gotta come back. You know, my students have never seen anything like this. I had never met a Holocaust survivor. I had never heard anything like this as like a 23-year-old. And he said, I can't come back. I'm gonna die soon. And when I do, it's up to you to tell my story. And he, at the time, had cancer. He knew it. Not long after, he passed away. And what he left, his memory is a blessing. He left a legacy of Holocaust education that challenged me to figure out how to capture that lightning in a bottle. And what I came up with was an approach to put students into leadership roles by applying innovation to genocide and human rights teaching. And that's the giant acronym, LIGHT, L-I-G-H-T, Leadership Through Innovation in Genocide Human Rights Teaching. And that's what exists to carry Jack's legacy forward into schools. And one last thing, and I made sure to bring this quote with me. Being from Pittsburgh, we have a very deep love of Fred Rogers. And when my father died, I was in a funeral home, and there was a pamphlet that said how to talk to children about death. And I had that moment as a teacher where I realized, oh my God, I'm teaching my students about death all the time. So I grabbed the pamphlet, and there was a quote inside of it that helped to shape all of these, the educational philosophy that would become a lot of this. It was Fred and Hedda Sharapan. They wrote, anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. It's not easy for any of us to accept that all living things, including ourselves and those we love, will die. And it's hard, of course, for us to think about this, let alone talk about it with our children. When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. The people we trust with that important talk can help us to know that we are not alone. Teachers are the trusted people in relationships in school systems. And so the thought was, school engagement is community engagement, and teachers are going to be teaching about this difficult stuff with or without our help. So it was really the call to action to help teachers be able to do less with more, not more with less. It was the call to action to help school systems better meet their own inherent capacity to counter hate and identity-based violence and discrimination.
Thank you, Nick. And so, Renisa, Amy shared a little bit about kind of that lightning moment when she had and Nick had his, and then she came to you and asked, how do we do this? So can you share a little bit about, for a community that was impacted by trauma, how does that speaker series continue to contribute to healing and growth for the community and the people impacted?
Yeah, as somebody who is close to the events of October 27th, but certainly not directly impacted, I know I personally felt deeply that the stories from that day needed to be told, and not just the horrific details of what modern-day anti-Semitism looks like, but the unexpected moments that were beautiful of healing, of strength, community building, community coming together. And for so many years, families weren't able to tell their story because of the pending legal proceedings. So once the trial ended and families like Amy were finally able to start telling their story, we really wanted to build something to support them and to elevate their voices and do so in a healing way. So we really carefully and intentionally built REACH to be healing-centered. It is survivor-led, survivors set the agenda. We have guidelines going into each presentation and to each classroom or auditorium to make sure that it remains healing-centered. For example, we make sure that families understand that they have the power to pass on a question that doesn't feel comfortable to them. We have a moderator, hopefully somebody that knows the families and already is familiar with their stories. And we work really hard to just keep that focus as to being healing-centered. We know from our work in trauma that the power of sharing personal narratives can be deeply healing. It not only helps families and survivors process the events of what happened, but it helps them reclaim agency over their story and in the process to form connections with the audience and build empathy. So it really is mutually beneficial for everyone involved.
It's amazing. I mean, it sounds great. Why wouldn't everybody do it? What are the challenges to getting something like that started then, given all the reasons to do it?
We've definitely encountered challenges and bumps along the way, and we still are. I think for me, one of the unexpected challenges is this group of people that you'll have the honor of hearing from in a few moments are probably some of the most humble human beings I have ever met in my entire life. So when we approached them and said, hey, we're going to have this speaker series, we're going to get you in front of audiences and classrooms to share your stories, I think a lot of people were filled with self-doubt and saying, why me? Why does my voice need to be heard? What do I have to say? So we worked really hard to help remove that sense of self-doubt, and we did that in a couple of different ways. One example that might seem small, but I think was quite empowering, was to have someone from our communications team work with members of REACH to create a speaker's biography. And the act of really just putting down their credentials, putting down their story, I think was really empowering and helped people to realize that I am an expert in my story, and I do have moral authority. I do deserve to be up on that stage, and my voice does matter, and that was a big success that we'll continue to build upon throughout this.
Thank you. I love that. Amy, so you've been doing this now. I mean, you were doing it on your own and with your family and in accompanying the Not in Our Town film, and now you've been doing REACH for over a year. So can you share with people here a little bit about maybe a rewarding encounter or something that's kind of come as a byproduct of doing that? Maybe like what makes you give so much of your time? What has happened that makes this worth it for you?
For me, it's not so much giving of my time, because I feel like it's something that I need to do. You know, my Bubby was so good to the community. She was always there for me and for everybody around her. So for me, it's very personal to just want to pass that on and to want to share her story and share who she was. So it never feels like it's a burden or it takes too much time. Yes, there's some additional paperwork that I have to do, but it doesn't ever feel like anything that is harming me or slowing me down. So I think that is something that keeps me going, even if I have a lot going on at the time. As far as impactful, I think it's different every school. Every school will have a panel or some sort of conversation, and afterwards the student will come down and they'll all meet us and they'll give us hugs and they'll talk to us. And one of the schools we went to, they had actually lost a student recently in a tragic incident. And there were students in the front who I could see were visibly upset while we were speaking. And afterwards, these 3 girls came down and they were speaking to us. And I remember one of them asking, you know, how did you do it? How do you get over the hard stuff? And I just thought to myself, you know, I was in that spot. I was begging for somebody to help me to get through this and to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's something that I could be for these students. And I think that's something that all of our speakers kind of have learned to see, that we are the person that is helping, but also seeing these students, seeing them learn, seeing them interact with us, it's helping us as well. It's getting us through the hard times. It's not easy to sit and be Jewish these days, but when you go to these schools, you have so much hope. You listen to the students speak. You listen to what they have to say, and it's just so personable. And it really allows us to see into the future of what our society is going to be like. And we just are a small part of helping with that. And anything we can do when we go into a classroom, any hugs we can give, any sayings we can tell them to help them, it's just only a little bit more that we can give of ourselves.
That's beautiful, thank you. So, I mean, I guess to sort of ask a little bit more, Renisa, you shared some of the ways that the REACH program, when you and Amy designed it, and kind of your work you've done to try to ensure that the Speakers Bureau is prepared. Is there anything else that sort of people should know if they're going to create Speakers Bureaus, which we believe that actually there's so many opportunities, and that's our plug, which is find survivors, find people who have lived experience, because they bring a lot to the table. But if they're going to do that, what are some of the ways that you would sort of tangibly tell people to minimize potential harm and maximize the benefit in terms of designing and preparing people?
One of the things that's been really instrumental for us is finding the right partners to start REACH. It certainly is not about me, and it's not about 1027 Healing Partnership. It's survivor-led, and we need the right partners to help bring this program to life, and we really, truly found the right partners. Nick and his team at Light have been completely invaluable in helping to provide trainings about the importance of storytelling and best practices going into schools. Our communications team has given trainings also about just some basic public speaking skills to bolster confidence. And again, our goal, or my goal as a support person, is really to help survivors and families feel empowered and feel comfortable and confident. So having the right partners really did help. We also work very hard to make sure that this is trauma-informed all the time, and we strive to live by that guideline with every single speaking engagement that we have. So we set the expectation that we're not going to have speakers come in and go through that nuanced, detailed timeline of what happened on October 27th. We just want to make sure that we remain healing-centered and trauma-informed the entire time. We also work very hard to make sure that each speaker has equal opportunity and equal access to all speaking engagements. We want this to be an equitable process, which is one of the reasons why we created REACH. The ultimate goal, I think, for all of us is that the legacy of 1027 lives on and that the lives of the 11 victims are remembered. So the more people that can tell the story, the louder that message will be, and the deeper and more long-lasting the connections will be. So we know that there's not a lack of stories to be told, nor a lack of people that want to hear them. So that's how we approach our speaking engagements.
Thank you. So Nick, is it true? Are there a lack of people who are willing to hear it? You know, when you're bringing authentic and experiential learning into the classroom, you know, both what are the potential benefits, what are the potential reasons why people don't, and how does Light sort of overcome that, and how have you helped REACH to figure out how to maximize the benefit for teachers so that there are more audiences willing to hear a little bit of what Renisa was saying?
Yeah, so we'll take it as two parts. How do we help teachers? How do we help speakers? So the first part with teachers, if you're not familiar with the state of education right now, post-pandemic, it's hard to be a teacher. It's demanding to be a teacher. It's hard to find time to pick up a phone and call somebody, to send an email, because there's a lot of stuff to do in the school day. So teachers need assistance connecting to organizations like REACH and 1027 Healing Partnership, and really they need help in three ways. Number one, they need help from within, from bold administrators who are willing to carve out time in the school day, because there's an opportunity cost to everything in the school day. So if you're bringing in a REACH speaker, that means you're not doing something else. That means the student's not in math class or English or science. So you really need administrators who are willing to acknowledge that this is not a nice to have, this is a must have. This is essential for creating a safe school. Second, you need help from outside organizations. And I would argue that most of the time, curriculum does not need to be brought up. Curriculum is a four-letter word in my industry. We try not to say it a lot, because as soon as you say that word, now you're on a 3 to 5 year path. So if you want to make this happen tomorrow, you need to find those curricular anchors. You need to say, okay, when do you teach the Holocaust? As part of your Holocaust lesson, do you talk about anti-Semitism? There's a direct connection to 1027-2018. So you need to find those culminating curricular anchor points and then build the programs around them. So for REACH, we've been very fortunate that we have access through Teen Screen and Film Pittsburgh to Repairing the World Stories from Tree of Life, the film. If we book a film screening with a school, it's very easy for us to say, hey, would you like a guest speaker? Would you like a panel discussion? And we've even pushed it further. Do you mind if we bring with us the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Western District of Pennsylvania to talk about the United Against Hate initiative from the Department of Justice? Do you mind if we bring the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh to do some kind of school beautification project, butterfly project, crocus project, murals, you name it? So you can build entire programs around this. And lastly, you need to start with teacher training and administrator training, professional development, we call it, for teachers in service. Because teachers don't just like graduate from education school speaking the language of genocide and mass atrocity prevention and awareness. I don't think I could rattle that term off until like 10 years into my career. So we need to help first-year teachers and even veteran teachers be able to communicate about what happened on 1027 and at other incidents of mass atrocity and genocide and human rights violations. So basic best practices in Holocaust, genocide, and human rights education. Number 2, training for the process of how to create these healing-centered spaces. So like bringing Maggie, bringing Renisa into schools and into rooms full of teachers well before the event so that they know what a healing-centered space is. What does it mean to build a trauma-informed program? So that the survivors and family members can bring their whole selves into these spaces because they've been created with a healing-centered approach. Also basic logistics, like who to call, how to call them. Teachers don't have a Rolodex. Teachers don't even have a Rolodex anymore. But teachers, you can tell I'm a little older. Teachers don't have that like quick list of contacts to reach out to. So we're trying to help build that for them. And lastly, they don't necessarily know how to communicate their ask to survivors. So whenever we first knew that REACH needed to be a thing is whenever I found out that Amy's phone number was being passed around a group of teachers. And I thought, that's not how we support the survivor community. We need to build some structure to this. So for the speakers, you know, the flip side is they are not classroom educators. Renisa just said a minute ago about some of them were struggling to find, to justify, you know, am I the right person to stand in front of hundreds of students? And we're trying to say, yes, absolutely you are. So for the speakers, it's helping them to understand how incredibly valuable and meaningful and profound their story is whenever it's shared with a group of young people. And helping them to understand the ask from teachers. So understanding, you know, what they're walking into, where they're supposed to show up. Helping get organized. So, you know, one of the early stages of REACH was creating a logo, which 1027 Healing Partnership did, and a website and a one-pager. And then creating, now where we're at, is creating a process so teachers can quickly and easily request the speakers without placing a great burden on the organization, because this is pretty much a lot of the organization that's managing these requests. And tomorrow we've got 29 schools that will potentially be making 29 requests for speakers, so that has to be managed efficiently. And lastly, you know, we needed to assign people to this so that someone knew when something is going right, who do I call? When something's going wrong, who do I call? Who do I speak to? You know, who are these contact points? So essentially, our school systems in southwestern Pennsylvania, and I'm sure if you're from far away, your school system too, it needs help with the asks and the offers. And so it took 1027 Healing Partnership and a group of teachers at Light to really sit down and say, how do we help not just build this bridge, but help people cross this bridge regularly, both directions?
Thank you, Nick. And I think, I mean, I can speak for having watched the incredible partnership of these 3 individuals in the creation, that we all believe it's doable more, that there's more opportunities, but it does take some intentionality and structure in there. And I just wanted to sort of share, as we transition to bringing in some of our friends who are on the REACH panels, and they're going to come up and share some of their stories. But one of the feedback that we got from a student, just so that you can start to think about why that experiential and authentic learning and the hug and the ability to learn from each other, what that kind of impact looks like. And this young person was a high school student. We'd had a request to come speak to a school in Florida. And what they wrote was, what happened in the temple is terrifying. I truly can't imagine the emotions each person felt that day. I feel so much for the victims and their families for not only having to personally see the damage, but losing a loved one within it. I grew up Christian and still practice it, so hearing the word prayer has become numb to me. But after the talk today, I realize how powerful prayer truly is. So one of the things that we've learned is how much people can integrate the stories that they hear into seeing their own grandmother or seeing their own houses of worship or seeing their own communities differently, and it's what inspires us to keep going. So thank you. Nick and Renisa, I'm going to ask you to exit Amy down there, and I'm going to invite up a few more friends here. And what you're going to hear from some of the speakers, you're going to hear a little bit of what they say, what sort of their why, share their story and why they share their story. So come on up. I'll invite you to get started while people are sitting. So Audrey here is going to get started, and she is one of our incredible community members. She'll tell you a little bit more about herself.
Audrey Glickman. We were targeted and shot at, and some of us were killed. Some of us survived, but survival is the bare minimum, so we need to take this forward. I need to take this forward. Of course, we haven't suffered alone. A community, a people, a nation, a world suffers at every such murder spree perpetrated. So we go beyond the suffering. I've been speaking publicly since a week after the shooting. Not only do we speak, but we have documentary films, thank goodness, and good filmmakers, that magnify and amplify our voices. The films, A Tree of Life and Repairing the World, bring home the stories that we have to tell. We tell our stories, we offer it for interpretation, and we ask everyone to go forward with us. When we participate together, when we act, when we reach out to each other in friendship, when we get rid of the indifference that plagues the world, we find that there are more of us who care than of those who hate. Our job is to cause peace to happen.
Good morning. I'm Ron Wedner. This is my wife, Andrea Mallinger Wedner. We are members of Tree of Life. In fact, we were married there 42 years ago last week. And Andrew was in the building that morning, was severely injured, spent 10 days in the hospital, has had some subsequent surgeries, and her mother, Rose Mallinger, was murdered that day, October 27th. Andrew?
I hope that participating in REACH, I can inspire students and schools to embrace inclusivity and kindness. Each time I visit a school, I'm deeply moved by the students I meet. Young leaders who are actively creating clubs to combat hate and engaging in light initiative events and programs. In my speaking engagements, I emphasize actionable steps everyone can take to improve our world. Whether it's raising awareness about bullying or advocating for acceptance across diverse backgrounds and beliefs. Another vital aspect of my mission is to honor my mother's memory. She was an extraordinary woman, an incredible mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother who radiated love and kindness to everyone she met. Despite my own journey through serious injuries and my recovery, the most challenging part for me has been grappling with the memory of how she died. Keeping her spirit alive fuels my commitment to make a positive impact in the lives of others.
I began speaking at schools in the aftermath of 1027, and I quickly discovered a genuine passion for engaging with students. In the wake of the shooting of the Tree of Life, some chose to focus on gun violence prevention or registering voters. Our family, my family, found our calling in connecting with students. This has been our unique way of honoring Rose's memory, and I truly believe we are making a difference. It's inspiring to witness these young people and their creativity and action. Their commitment to positive change is incredibly gratifying, and knowing we can help them makes it all the more worthwhile. If our message can prevent just one young person from going down the wrong path, then REACH has succeeded. Anti-Semitism and other forms of identity-based hate often begin at home, around the kitchen table, or in the living room. As REACH grows, I know we can create more opportunities for entire families and, yes, entire communities to participate in our events. We can build intergenerational healing and strengthen the connections between kids and their parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan? Can we put his mic on?
Thank you. Hello, my name's Alan Mallinger. My mother was Rose, who was murdered at the Tree of Life Synagogue, and that was my sister Andrea, who was alongside my mother, our mother, that day. I've chosen to do the REACH program so that I can continue to tell the story of what happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue on 10/27/18. We've spoken mostly at high schools, and they'll show the film Repairing the World, Stories from the Tree of Life. If you haven't seen it, it's a documentary about what happened that day and the response of the city of Pittsburgh to what happened that day. It's very impactful, and when the kids see the film, I think it's important that after they see the film, they see the people who are in the film, and it kind of makes it real for them as it is for us every day. And I think that has an impact on them when they see a real person. It's also interesting to hear the questions that they have. They want to ask us as a group about what happened and what happened at the trial. And so we enjoy meeting with them and interacting with them after the film as well, to feel closer to them. And a lot of them have been impacted by violent crimes, and we share that with them as well. And I hope that this program does have an impact on young people and can teach them to hopefully eradicate hate in the future.
Thank you, Alan. Next, we have Jody Cart, who is the proud daughter of Mel and Sandra Wax. Mel was killed that day, and Jody is also a member of Bethel Synagogue and very active there.
So as Maggie mentioned, I lost my father on October 27th, 2018. And for that first year, I tried to figure out how I was going to honor my father and how I could turn my pain into something purposeful. And I had a vision of speaking on a stage at my local high school where my son had attended, because I knew I had a story to tell. And I didn't know how I was going to make that happen. I thought possibly I would reach out to the school superintendent or the principal. I didn't know how I would get from point A to point B, but I knew it was something that I needed to do. And thanks to REACH, I found my opportunity. I have twice now spoken at my son's high school, along with other schools. And I think one of the things that has been most powerful to me and probably most unexpected was the reaction from the students. So many of them afterwards, as Alan mentioned, and others have mentioned, they come up to us, they approach us, they have such insightful questions for us, and they share their traumas with us. They want to know how you heal, how you move forward from something so horrific. And having the ability to share that has been what's been most powerful and most meaningful to me. And the message that I try to share with students is that we're all different. It's such a basic message. I may be Jewish, and somebody may be Muslim. It's our differences that make us so unique and interesting, and we should want to learn about one another and not hate one another, and we should want to support one another and be kind to one another and not hate one another. And as Alan said, if I can get my message across to just one person and make them a little bit kinder, then I feel like I've accomplished my goal.
Hello, my name is Sharon Stein, and my beloved husband, Danny Stein, was one of the 11 victims in the shooting on October 27th, 2018, the Tree of Life Synagogue. Danny and the other 10 beautiful souls were brutally killed in their house of worship simply because they were Jewish. It has taken me about 6 years to find my voice and the strength to speak up about the most horrific and traumatic event of my life. With the support of my family, friends, the 1027 Healing Partnership, REACH program, and the amazing community of Squirrel Hill, I realized that even though it is very difficult and emotional for me, I must speak up and tell the story of that fateful day. I am now Danny's voice. I want everyone to remember that there are good people in the world and to think about what you can do to spread kindness and shine a positive light. It has been almost 6 years since the last time I saw my husband, but I know that he is with me 24/7, always in my heart and standing by my side, cheering me on and helping me to move forward throughout the most difficult times.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the incredible people who teach me every day. And a big thank you to the summit. I want people here to know that there are a number of survivors here in the audience. There are a number of people who have experienced targeted violence who choose to be here and find meaning in it. And the summit has done an incredible job at making that a welcome presence. So I hope for all of you that you have more opportunities to hear a story that you've never heard before and to figure out how we can spread some of the incredible voices of survivors. So thank you.